The story begins inside a hospital, where a young girl named Eve Macaro sits quietly, bruised and bloodied. In her hand, she tightly grips a spinning ballerina toy. Her eyes are filled with pain and confusion. As the toy spins, her memories begin to rewind. Not long ago, Eve lived in peace with her father, Javier, in a secluded home away from the noise of the world. Javier was a quiet man but clearly capable, trained, alert, and always watching. He raised Eve alone and taught her how to survive, how to be aware of danger. Their life seemed simple, peaceful, until it wasn't. One day, armed strangers invaded their home. Javier acted fast. He hid Eve in a secret compartment beneath the floor and told her to stay silent. Then he grabbed his weapons and fought back. One by one, he eliminated the intruders. But then came the man behind the attack, the leader of a dangerous cult, the Chancellor. He wasn't there just for revenge. He came with a twisted sense of justice. Years ago, Javier had taken the Chancellor's wife, who was once part of the cult, and helped her escape. The Chancellor blamed him for her death. To punish him, he presented two cruel options. Javier could take his own life and spare Eve, or he could fight and bring death to them both. Javier hesitated, but when he heard Eve's voice cry out from hiding, he made his choice. He fought the attackers again and managed to kill them, but in the process he was fatally wounded. Javier grabbed Eve and carried her out of the house just as a bomb went off behind them, wiping out the remaining enemies, except for the Chancellor. He got Eve to safety but collapsed shortly after. Right in front of his daughter, Javier took his final breath. Back in the hospital, Eve is met by Winston Scott, an old friend of her father's. He offers her a new beginning, to be taken in by her father's former allies. With nowhere else to go, Eve agrees. Winston brings her to the Ruska Roma, a secretive society hidden behind the cover of a ballet academy, led by a mysterious and powerful woman known as the Director. There, Eve meets Nogi, a stern woman who becomes her mentor. Nogi introduces her to the legend of the Kikimora, spirits that can be protectors or destroyers, depending on the soul they inhabit. She hints that Eve has the potential to become one of these spirits. The next 12 years are brutal. Eve grows up under the unforgiving eye of the Director. She trains in ballet until her feet bleed. She learns to fight, to shoot, to survive. Her entire life becomes a cycle of pain, improvement, and discipline. She has no real friends except one, Tatiana, another young trainee. But one day, Tatiana disappears. The Director tells Eve she was let go. She didn't have what it takes to be one of them. Then one day, the school receives a special guest, John Wick, a legendary assassin. His arrival shakes the students. Eve sees him and dares to ask how she can be like him. John's answer is simple. It's her choice. She can walk out and start her journey, just like he did. Shortly after, the Director sends Eve on her first real mission. She must protect a young woman named Katla Park from a dangerous assassin named Il Song. Eve finds Katla at a nightclub, and soon enough, Song and his henchmen arrive. Eve steps in, fights them off, and ultimately defeats Song using the peen of a hammer. She saves Katla and proves she's ready. 2 months later, Eve completes another hit. But just as she's leaving, a van crashes into her car. 2 men jump out and attack her. She defeats them, but notices something chilling. One man has an X-shaped scar on his wrist, the same symbol worn by those who murdered her father. Eve cuts off the man's hand and brings it to the Director. The Director tells her the truth. The scar belongs to members of the Chancellor's cult. Though they are enemies of the Ruska Roma, a truce exists. Because of that, the Director refuses to help Eve take revenge. Unwilling to give up, Eve turns to Winston again. She goes to the Continental Hotel, where she checks in with Sharon, the calm and loyal concierge. Eve meets Winston and gives him a gold token, the same one he gave her after her father's death. She asks for help again. Winston hesitates but eventually agrees, assigning her to track down an assassin named Daniel Pine, who might have information on the cult. Eve follows Pine to the Continental in Prague. She breaks into his room and finds a little girl there, Ella, Pine's daughter. Tensions rise, guns are drawn, but no shots are fired. Eve explains her mission. Pine listens. Meanwhile, a woman named Lena, who works for the Chancellor, alerts him that Eve is at the hotel. The Chancellor, ignoring the sacred rule not to spill blood on continental grounds, sends killers after Eve. He also doubles the bounty on Pine's head to create chaos. The attackers try to storm Pine's room, but one is killed by a trap. The others are dealt with by Pine and Eve. They try to flee with Ella but are eventually overpowered. Eve and Pine are knocked unconscious. Ella is taken. Later, Eve wakes up in the hotel. Since she didn't kill anyone on sacred ground, she is allowed to live. But her attackers, who did break the rules, are executed. Eve is released only to be captured again by her own organization. She's taken to a cell and meets a woman named Petra, who claims she is Eve in 10 years. They are forced to build and fire guns at each other. Petra hesitates. Eve shoots first. The director orders Eve to drop her personal vendetta. But Eve disobeys. She goes to see a gun dealer named Frank. While there, cult gunmen ambush them. Frank is shot, but Eve kills the attackers. Grateful, Frank gives her the location of a hidden cult base in Hallstatt, a town in the Austrian mountains. Eve travels there and finds a tavern run by Agnetha. Soon, cult members find her. She fights them off in a fierce battle and shoots Agnetha in the head. In the basement, she arms herself with grenades and weapons. Despite her efforts, she is captured again. When her jacket is torn off, the cult sees her Ruska Roma tattoo. The Chancellor realizes who she really is. He brings her face to face with Lena. And then comes a shocking truth. Lena is Eve's older sister. Years ago, when their mother fled the cult, she only took Eve, leaving Lena behind. Lena grew up inside the cult, filled with anger and betrayal. She believes their father, Javier, caused their mother's death and stole their chance at a better life. The Chancellor reveals that Ella, Pine's daughter, is actually his granddaughter. He plans to train her into the perfect assassin, the chosen one. The Chancellor orders his men to kill both sisters. A grenade is thrown. Lena dies in the blast. Eve survives. The Chancellor calls the director and declares war. She insists she didn't send Eve, but he gives her until midnight to stop Eve or face total conflict. Knowing the clock is ticking, Eve prepares for a final battle. John Wick arrives, sent by the director to stop her. They fight. Neither wins. In the end, John lets her go, giving her a chance to end it her way. As the final battle begins, the Chancellor unleashes every remaining assassin to stop Eve. Eve charges in with a flamethrower, burning through enemies. But then, Dex, the Chancellor's top enforcer, arrives with one of his own. Eve runs out of fuel. She grabs a fire hose to block the flames. The two face off. Just before Dex can unleash a final blast, John snipes his tank, causing a huge explosion that kills him. The Chancellor grabs Ella and tries to escape. Eve catches up and kills his men. When she confronts him, he warns that killing him won't change anything. But Eve doesn't hesitate. She shoots him dead. Ella is finally safe. Eve brings her back and reunites her with Daniel Pine at the hospital. Later, Eve checks into the New York Continental. She attends a ballet performance and sees Katla on stage, dancing. But peace is short-lived. Eve receives a notification on her phone. There's now a $5 million bounty on her head. She looks around and sees other audience members checking their phones too. They've received the same message. Without a word, Eve stands up and walks out. She knows the war isn't over,